you for being here. So, you just said it, but I'm Lisa. And for those of you that don't know me, I am one of the designers in the product team. And I'm here to talk about New Year's resolutions. Dun, dun, dun! Thanks. Okay, I'm done. That's my thought. So, by a show of hands, how many of you had made resolutions this year, either personally or professionally? Wow. Okay, almost everybody. So I don't know how you've been doing with yours, but when it comes to New Year's resolutions, they usually look something like this. You came up with your plan in December. You're feeling motivated and inspired in January. But thanks to the false hope theory or syndrome, which is a fancy new term that's been coined for failing at your resolution goals year after year. Yeah, somebody actually came up with that. February starts to struggle. And by March, you're one of the 92% people that fail at their goals every year. 92, that was crazy. That really surprised me a lot. So this was definitely the same cycle for me too. But finally, this past year, I found this solution that worked for me so well. It was amazing because suddenly I was able to achieve these resolutions that I had been struggling with for years. Some of them even for over 10 years. So now I like to think that I'm part of the 8%. And here's how you can be the 8% too. So I'm going to walk you through this process, my resolution solution, and I hope that it helps you guys and resonates with you. So a little background about me first. I've always been super big into self-improvement and therapy, trying to be a better friend, a better coworker, better wife. And like most people, I carry around this enormous mental list of all the things I want to change about myself, all the things that I want to learn how to do and improve. And some are easier than others. One of them, for example, that was pretty easy for me to achieve was drinking more water. One that was a little bit harder but still doable was learning a new design program to stay relevant in my career. But some of them were impossible because no matter how hard I tried, I just kept failing. And I would just end up feeling guilty that I didn't have strong enough willpower to achieve it. So last year, I got totally fed up and I started experimenting with some different solutions and came up with this 4-step program. Goals versus lifestyle, baby steps, the dirty 30, and let's go streaking. So let's get to it. Step 1. This solution was assessing whether my resolution was a goal or a lifestyle. And these are just the way that I define these words. But it's really important to differentiate between the two because they require very different approaches. So if you don't define that in the beginning, most likely you're setting yourself up for failure. To give examples of the differences between a goal and a lifestyle change, a goal tends to be simple, straightforward, usually has a little deadline like mail Christmas cards by 12/1. There may be a couple things that you have to do, but it's not really like a big lifestyle change. Like you may have to set up a calendar invite to purchase your cards. Sorry, I get all shaky up here. You'll spend some time updating your contact list, and then you'll send it out. Maybe you'll spend like a morning sending them out one weekend. But then once they're out, they're done. You're okay till next year. It's a pretty easy change. Lifestyle change, on the other hand, are way more complex. They affect daily habits, and they tend to be something that hopefully becomes a long-term change for us. So some examples might be to be a better friend, or a complex goal that could require you to have to change your daily habits and your lifestyle as well could be something like pay off credit card debt. And so for that way, you might set a date to pay off your credit card debt by, and then you're going to actually have to focus on taking a look at your numbers, setting up a budget for yourself, and the lifestyle change is really in maintaining that budget and pushing yourself to not slip on that so that the outcome ends up being a successful goal, but it took a lifestyle change to reach it. So I think the biggest problem that shoots us, or shot me in the foot a lot when it came to these New Year's resolutions, are that they're actually very complex lifestyle changes, but I was thinking of them as simple goals. So I picked some of my most difficult resolutions to work on last year that I was just so frustrated with that I was still struggling with them. And these were a couple of those that I achieved at the end of last year that I was so excited about. So the first was decrease weekly spending to put more money into savings and 401k. That's something that I'd already done, but this year I wanted it to be a lot more aggressive. And then answer every phone call and respond to every text message. That's something that I had been struggling with for over 10 years. It would drive me crazy. So I finally did that, which was amazing. And then exercise every single morning for 4 months. I hadn't been able to ever do that, so I was excited. So on paper, these goals might look like something that they are just goals, but they required a big lifestyle change and a daily habit change for me to achieve it. So now, this is where step 2 comes in. Baby steps. This was inspired by a form of therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy. And you might have heard of this. It's a type of therapy that helps people overcome severe anxiety disorders like OCD or Hoarders or Bill Murray and What About Bob, if you've seen that movie. And the power of baby steps is it teaches you to break down your goals into tiny pieces and to develop confidence and momentum by working on one small piece at a time. So last year, I did one of my bigger resolutions, which was to be a better friend. So in step 1, I identified that this definitely was going to be a lifestyle change. In step 2, I created a list of all the little changes that I think I need to make in order to become the kind of friend that I want to be. And the 2 top difficult ones for me were answering the phone calls more often and responding to text messages more timely. So, but since baby steps told me I had to pick just one of these to focus on at a time, I chose answering phone calls more often. So this led to step 3 of my solution, the Dirty 30. It was inspired by an article I read last year. It was a study on how long it actually takes to develop a new habit. And the article said it takes 21 days to form a new habit. But I'm extra stubborn, so I made it 30, which is why it's the Dirty 30. And also because dirty work comes in at this point. This is where the meat and potatoes are. So from this article, I took, okay, I need to commit to do this resolution for 30 days with the expectation that after 30 days it will have developed into a new habit, thereby making my resolution a success. So I thought it was a good start. I proclaimed my goal to my husband. I was all excited and confident for my start date. Now, I should explain, because I know it's not necessarily a common thing to have on your resolutions. The reason answering phone calls and text messages were difficult for me, like I mentioned before, was because I had severe anxiety around those 2 things. So those 2 things I've been struggling with since I was a teenager. And it was definitely my most frustrating habit. I knew it was really damaging friendships that I had because I wasn't being reliable. I know it hurt a lot of like family members and people that I love. And I didn't want to be like that, but I just felt like in a rock and a hard place because every year I would just try again and again and it wouldn't work. So the first day, I answered a call and I was really excited. And then an unknown number called and I was like, hell no, I'm not answering that. So I fell through. Then I did okay, answered a few more calls. I was feeling pretty great. And then my super chatty friend that wanted to talk for hours called and I really didn't feel like it at the time, so I didn't pick up. And so then it kind of kept going like that until I started to not pick up again more and more until after a couple weeks in, I realized I had failed. This wasn't working. Which brings me to the 4th and final step of this solution. Let's go striking! So you're going to look at his armpit for a little while. I realized that the problem with my attempt of just using the first 3 things was I needed baby steps for my baby steps. So I added on the rule that for every resolution I worked on, I would commit to do it 30 times in a row, as opposed to just doing it more often over 30 days. I had to commit to making it a streak. And I had to track those streaks visually and physically. Like I had a little dry erase pen in front of all my mirrors in the house, and like each mirror was dedicated to a different goal, and I would go and like mark the check marks every day I did it. And then I had little trackers in my iPhone for everything that I had that I wanted to track on the go. So now my resolution went from be a better friend to answering phone calls more often, to answering more phone calls more often for 30 days, to answering every phone call 30 times in a row. And this is when it all started to click. The power of going streaking is that when you commit to a streak, you get very protective of the progress that you've made. So, for example, when you've powered through like the first tough 5 days and the 6th day, you're like, I really don't want to do this today. That risk of having to start that streak over, especially knowing how hard it was for you to just get through, that tends to help push you through to do it anyway. And that's what really helped me a lot. And when you track the progress of your streak visually, like how I did on the mirrors, it's super depressing to have to go and like wipe that off. So that was another big motivator for me to not have to do that. So the Dirty 30 finish line adds additional motivation as you get closer to the 30 mark. And because the anticipation of wanting to work through this as you get closer, so that you can move on to the next thing that you're really excited to get better at, that's also a really great motivator to help push you through those last tough days. Then, once you've succeeded at one resolution and you're able to move on to the next, if you find yourself starting to slip back into old habits, you can do a quick dirty 10, dirty 20, dirty 30 refresh on just that one small piece of your resolution. And eventually, as you get stronger and stronger, you can work on more than one at a time. But remember, baby steps. So instead of how I would approach this in the past, trying to do all these things at once for the rest of my life and never getting there was really frustrating. So now I work on one small resolution at a time. And sometimes moving that slowly can be really frustrating. It was super frustrating for me in the beginning because I'm really impatient. I just want to do everything at the same time, which I know Kiz and all the other SDs for sites knows all about that side of me. But it was worth it because after 3 months of finishing 3 resolutions that I had been struggling with for years, that I was sold to that process. In the long run, it saves you a lot of time. And to be clear, this isn't to stop, the goal isn't to stop your resolution after the Dirty 30. It's to have, hopefully by that point, developed a new habit so that you can continue doing it with much less mental effort and build up on top of that. So keep building on your success. So that's my resolution solution in a nutshell. So to recap, the 4 steps are goals versus lifestyles. You're identifying if it's going to be more complex than you think. Baby steps, which is breaking it into small pieces. Dirty 30, commit to 30 times to develop that new habit. And let's go streaking is committing to doing those 30 times in a row. So if you remember one thing from this, is to ask yourself if the resolution you're struggling with is a goal or a lifestyle change. And if it's a lifestyle change, you need to break it down. But regardless of how you do it, making a lifestyle change is always going to be hard. There's always going to be tough times. You'll probably have some setbacks, and that's okay. And you'll need to identify some of those extra motivators that are unique to you, such as writing mantras on the mirror or having a buddy system or some kind of accountability, whatever resonates with you. You'll have to find that on your own. Thanks for listening, and good luck, everybody. Questions?
What are your resolutions like coming up? Do you have any new ones?
Yeah, right now I'm working on watch less TV. And oh God, it's horrible. I hate it so much. It makes me jittery, like not being able to watch it. But I'm on day 17 on that. And I'm only allowed to watch it if I have insomnia in the middle of the night, which I do a lot. So it's kind of not really not watching TV, but it's way less. Or if my husband turns on The Simpsons and I can watch The Simpsons. And then, what's the other one I'm working on right now? Oh, dental hygiene. I'm doing brushing both times of the day, because I hadn't been, which was gross. Flossing, gargling, and the white strips. And then the big ones coming up that I'm nervous about are to follow through with social commitments. So actually, I'm kind of thinking of this one being my first one, but I don't know, that's kind of cheating, but that's a big one that I'm nervous about, but I can't wait to do, because that's another thing that has been a really bad habit for me.
Do you have multiple resolutions going on at the same time, or mostly it's just one or two?
So I now have like 2, 3 pushing it goals at the same time, or resolutions, because I went through this for about 6 months last year. So I felt like by the time this year started, I had my momentum going. But every once in a while, I have to stop myself to say like, nope, you can't add that in. You're already doing 2. So yeah.
What if you bump into like an event in your life that makes achieving these goals harder? Like you had an injury or something like that. Do you cancel them or do you recalibrate them? Like what do you usually do?
Yeah, that's tough. So I faced that when I had the work out every day for 4 months goal, because I was struggling with my health during that time. And the workouts were first thing in the morning. And a lot of times, first thing in the morning tends to be when I feel the sickest. And I was struggling with fainting. So it was working out in my room and just getting lightheaded a lot and passing out. So, but I had to keep going. So I found like other ways to work out that weren't something that was like on the floor, like ab crunches or things like that. For me, like that wasn't enough of a blocker to totally stop. Cause I think that's like things come up a lot. That's probably the reason why a lot of resolutions fail. It's because these things come up that like, you're like, oh wow, I got to deal with this. I just can't do this today. But for me, when I allowed those pauses or those breaks to happen, it opened up room to do that more and more and more until I failed, like the phone call thing. So I'd say do as much as you possibly can to still power through. And if the interruption is just like, so like you can't, it just needs to stop, then that's up to you. I mean, you could remember where you stopped, and when you're ready to pick up again, try to pick up from that point. Maybe at that point you have developed enough of a habit that you can kind of keep the momentum going. Or maybe it's just something that you can't commit to right now, and you're going to have to put that on the back burner on your list for whenever life settles down. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think Clara?
Thanks. So you touched upon this a little bit, but could you give more detail around the exercise thing? Like what were some things that you did, just concrete things that you did to help break it up into baby steps and make it happen?
So I was having a lot of aches and pains, and my doctors we couldn't figure out what was going on. And so the thing that they kept recommending is you need to do physical therapy, you need to exercise regularly, and that might help. And it helped tremendously. But it was hard because, like I said, I was sick during that. And so I kept saying like, oh, I'm gonna work out, I'm gonna go find a gym, and then I'll find the gym, and then I'll like find a way to make it work in my routine. And I was looking into like the gyms that are around here, and they're all super intense. So I was like, I don't think I can do the Berry boot camp, whatever that is down there in Orange Theory. So it took me a while to actually figure out what exercise program I was going to be able to do. And so I wasn't really able to start until I had that program selected. And that took time for me to just like say, oh, I'll go running every time. And then realizing like I'm not really strong enough to run right now. So what else can I do? Until eventually I started going to online videos, and I found Jillian Michaels from The Biggest Loser. She has like the best videos. So I got a whole bunch of those and just started to try it. And I just really liked her a lot. So that really helped me. So then it was identifying like not just that I was going to do it, but how often I was going to do it. and then what time of the day. That was the other like breaking down I had to do, because I would try different times of the day. I thought maybe I'll like come here, and on my lunch break I'll like go run or something, and that didn't work out because I had like cram lunch work to finish. So kind of switched over to the first thing in the morning. And then from there, that meant that I would have to make sure I'm going to bed earlier at night, because this was going to be my biggest priority, was my health. So it kind of caused like a trickle down effect that I had to plan for as well. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Hi, thanks for your talk. So you like spoke of resolution rehab. How do you deal with a resolution relapse? So I have a personal like story associated with it. So there was a point in my life where I was like working out for like 3 to 4 months where I had like bulked up enough, and then at one point I was like, shit, H&M medium size doesn't fit me anymore. I don't know how to deal with this. No, it's not. But it's like partly a joke too. But anyway, it's like, but I guess like, how do you like? Because when you like get on a roll, you can get on a roll for a while, and then something in your life, like maybe an event or something, like stops you from like being on that roll, and how do you get back on it again?
Yeah, that's tough. So I'm actually dealing with that with the social commitments resolution, because I had tried to do that last year. But what I found was, first of all, it takes way longer, because the 30 times is dependent on what you're doing. If it's actually 30 times, or if it's 30 days, or some other type of measurement. And for the social commitments thing, that meant that I had to like agree to all these social commitment things that weren't really coming in on my calendar. Like, people were used to me not coming to things, so I didn't get invited to a lot of stuff. So I kind of was having a hard time with the time between these things, and started to slip on it. And I realized that this was going to be one of those goals that I would only be able to focus on it. Even though I've developed this like ability to handle a couple more at a time, that one is so difficult that it's going to need its own thing. So now I'm finishing up the ones I'm on now, and then I'm going to sit down and try to figure out what didn't work last time and what can I try to do this time. Sometimes it's that I didn't break it down enough, so I have to go back and like go through the baby steps. It's hard though. I mean, that's why these things fail. It's hard.
Sorry, one more. So I know that you write on your mirrors mantras. What is one that you would like to share with us?
You can't change without challenge. Woo! That was Jillian Michaels. Any more? All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Talks team.